Hi, I'm Gabe.
And I'm Kat.
And we're the Ghouls Next Door. And we are ready for the revolution.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
The civil war that is inevitably going to happen. And what you're hearing is a very large... What are you... what are you going to do in nunchucks?
I don't know, I'm a fight, you know. I learned how to do it.
No. Find a hammer or something for the revolution. That's what we're going to need. Because we are going to be talking about the First Purge. Cat. Really set on nunchucks.
I have
huh?
2 nunchucks.
That's good.
Nunchucks or nunchucks?
Nunchucks, I think. You know what? That's a good...
If I don't know how to say them, I think it's still fine that I own them.
Nunchucks. Yeah, nunchucks.
Nunchucks, like they're none of yours.
Yep. And
they're
it's
not for
none
you.
of your business.
I'm gonna hit you in the face with them. It's not for you.
Yes. That's smart.
I genuinely don't know how they work.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, so
we'll figure it out. There's also scissors here, so
yeah.
I'm gonna do stabby stabs.
So we're talking today about the First Purge.
Mm-hmm.
And
not like first as in
the first one made. We're talking about the film titled The First Purge, which is about it's like a prequel. It's a prequel to the Purge series.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we were watching it, and it's like, it's modern day, right? And there's like attacks, and it feels so real. It's ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
And it's happening like on the screen, and they're being attacked in their house. It felt like Attack the Block, but minus aliens, and replace it with actual white supremacists.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, man, we need like weapons in our house in case it happens.
I'm gonna be really honest. I have never in my life felt like, hey, I should get a gun. But watching this film, I was like, oh my God, we need guns. Yeah. What are we doing? What do you mean? Like, if someone comes, like, what?
What do you do?
Like, absolutely not. I'm not gonna be able to fight him with no nunchucks. Absolutely not.
And you know what's funny is like, so coming off of like the Candyman film, right? Mm-hmm. Is that we have like this, like Helen was going into this neighborhood and they're like, gangs are in there. Like we live in Philadelphia. Like we live in the city where people might be afraid and might think I should have a gun to protect myself. But it literally like never occurred to us because we're like, whatever, like maybe a bat or something, right? Like you just in case there's theft or something, you know, like whatever. But very like not even then, right? Yeah. Just to be like basic protecting yourself. But it literally took seeing a film where there's like the government conspiracy, white supremacists entering your home, and there's nothing else that like the world can do to protect you. That we were like,
because they have all the guns.
We should get a gun.
Like, they have all the money for the guns. They have the budgets. They have the financial backing to out-militarize us. I have now officially, I'm like, yeah.
They have the NRA. And that's what the founding fathers in this film, the party, the election party, were brought into power by the NRA. Mm-hmm. By this idea of the Second Amendment that's supposed to protect the true Americans, right? And so, yeah, I think it's really funny that, like, we live in a place that I feel like other people would be like, you should have a gun to protect yourself. We're like, no. And then we were like, oh, but white people... And like,
we need guns to get rid of the racist people who are coming for our lives.
Yeah. So that was entertaining to me.
It was very... It hit in such like a visceral way where it's just like, I feel like it was so scary because it was 100% that like societal horror. It was like, this is what's happening outside right now. Like, I was like yelling at Mike. We had to watch it on a computer screen because I've decided the world has intentionally made this film very hard to find. And rated it not well. Like it's like at 55% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, it had like 3 stars.
Rotten Tomatoes is racist to me now. I just like, it was a fantastic, it was a fantastic film. Mm-hmm. It was saying exactly what life was, but because it was like made back in 2018 where we were still calling out people for literally using their rights to stand up for things that they believed in, and everyone should believe in, we were still in that phase where it's not the time, don't do it that way, where I'm convinced it has been intentionally taken off public access because it's literally just saying exactly what's happening right now.
Honestly, I'm ready to just call Shudder and be like, one, they need to flesh out their horror noir section, because right now it's just a handful of blaxploitation films, the horror noir documentary, 2 indie films, one is a short film, one is a full-length one, and like one other film, right? And it's like, how are we going to have this right now? And you have a section called horror noir, and there's like 10 films in there.
Yeah, there's so many other films that need to be in there.
Like, get in touch with us, Shudder, because we have some recommendations for you.
Yeah.
And if it's not on Netflix, it's not on Hulu, like, you have an opportunity.
I had to pay $15.
Yes. And it was
to watch this on my computer screen,
yes.
not even on a TV.
Yeah.
And I don't regret it.
Yeah.
It was worth it.
So, for people who are wondering what we're talking about, it is the First Purge, and I will tell you what IMDb says it is.
Say the words.
America's third political party, the new founding fathers of America, Tea Party, comes to power and conducts an experiment. No laws for 12 hours on Staten Island. No one has to stay on the island, but $5,000 is given to anyone who does, and it's directed by Gerard McMurray, who is a black man.
Yeah.
So right there, we know it's getting done, right?
Yeah.
Nothing About Us Without Us, and he is very deliberate about everything in this film. And, like...
There was no subtlety.
Yeah.
It was beautiful.
Yeah, there's this, like... So we found some articles about it, but there's one from The Verge, and I think this one really, like, kind of explains how I feel about a lot of media that, like, the ones that we have a problem with are media that either, like... just dips a toe into their message or, you know, skirts around it in certain ways. And in ways that I feel like we've even done, right? Like,
we're guilty of it too. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're worried we're going to offend somebody, or we're worried. Well, it's like, yes, difference between worried about offending somebody and just being offensive.
Yeah.
But like, we're very worried about, because we are a public figure, and making sure that we're intentionally saying the things that we believe in and that we want to be out there.
Yeah.
So we have hesitated in the past.
Or even like kind of trying to, like, struggling with this idea of like us being our edutainment podcast, right? Like, we want to be educational, but we also want to be entertaining. And so there are times when we've encountered really dark subjects, because that's just what happens when you're in horror, right? Where we have like not intended to get as deep or dark as we did, or like going into it, we had to like prep ourselves for it. Like when we did the population control, I don't think we knew that's where we would end up.
Oh, yeah. A lot of topics, it ends up like that, where we'll look into it and we'll be like, all right, this is going to be a fun time. We're going to talk about this. It's like, I bet you there's some crazy conspiracies. And then we're like, oh, God, the world.
Yeah. Yeah, like, why don't we know? Sounds. Yeah, like, why don't we know?
Where were we?
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think, like, you know, with, like, even just thinking back to the time travel episode, right? Like, I struggled, like, even pitching, I was like, you know, we're doing time travel, it's fun. We've been doing all these wacky things. And I was like, let's do About Time. Let's do this. And then I was like, let's do See You Yesterday. And I was like, when we do that film, it's going to get intense. It's going to get racial. It's going to be about problems. And so it was like, even then I was hesitant to be like, should we do that? Are people going to be upset because we're like talking about something like that? And then it was like, no. And then like, you know, researching it, being like, no, like this needs to get said. And not even knowing that the world would blow up as the way that it did, like 2 weeks later, like having no idea that, you know, we were one of a million, right? That were feeling that same way. And so I feel like this film, like it's such a breath of fresh air, because all the other films kind of like dabbled and dipped a toe into the political and situational things, right? And then this one is like, no, we're gonna confront it. We're gonna be purposeful. It's just like Jordan Peele and his social horror films, where it's just like, I'm gonna spoon feed you. Like, I'm like, we're gonna put it right. You can't argue.
Avoid it.
Yeah, you cannot argue that this is not what it's about. Like, there's no way for you to be like, it's this, right? And so there's an article on Verge.com that talks about it. So it says, 2013 film The Purge, writer-director James DeMonaco says, if it sparks any kind of discourse about violence in society, I think that's a good thing. If people just enjoy it, great. But if they want to talk about violence, guns in our society, that's great too. That kind of half commitment to the film's political elements defined the series until now. The Purge and its sequels, The Purge Anarchy in 2014 and The Purge Election Year in 2016, both written and directed by DeMonaco, all tiptoed up the line of delivering a loud, clear political message, but both films retreated before their subtext became explicit. The first Purge ends with the none too subtle suggestion that the only way to prevent a racist, classist, authoritarian dystopia from coming to pass is by taking to the streets, ideally with weapons in hand. The film turns One Night on Staten Island into a compression of the last few years of real-world American horror, a place where random violence seems like less of a threat than armed white supremacists and a government that sees them as allies in an ongoing culture war. Which, when you read that...
From 2018.
2018, right? And then you look at today's world and you read like articles about Philadelphia right now where we have groups of white supremacists and people who are vigilantes in Fishtown and in South Philadelphia who are combating Black Lives Matter protesters and being backed by the police. It's like, this is the real world that people have been living this whole time. And it took like being the fourth one in this series to tell us what it's about.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so real. The fact that it's been terrifying here. Like, we live... Oh, sorry. South Philly is in Philadelphia, where we live in Philadelphia. Yes. Not specifically in a district of Philadelphia.
We are moving, so...
Yeah, we are moving. Okay, so yeah, South Philly. Down the street from our house is where... the racists on parade with weapons who were drinking, who were like walking around hitting reporters. I was watching the stream of the one reporter who got beat up in Fishtown and then like having people literally tell people who are scared for their lives that the racists with bats are there to protect them. Yeah. Not there to protect us. Like, no, not for them. People who are calling in scared, it's not to protect them. No. It's to protect the white people. Yes. It's to protect the racists and the cops and the government and 2018 there.
And the Columbus statue.
Because we need the man who cuts off hands unless you bring enough gold.
Yes. The guy who was
Native
arrested
American.
in his own country.
Yeah.
They are the gravy seals or Wooder Isis. That's my favorite. That's my favorite.
Wooder Isis. Because of Wooder.
Yeah, Wooder
water.
Water. Exactly.
I get it.
You got it.
I'm picking it up.
Yeah. And so watching this, I was like, what else should we do? And I was like, I've always wanted to do the First Purge, and I hadn't seen it before.
I didn't expect it to be as real as it was.
Yeah. And so we put it on, and I would say, so for this film, cinematically, like, they definitely had a low budget. And so it's not something to, like, write home about cinematically. There are some, like, special effects or things that are very simple because that's not really what the point is. Like, I was watching, I was like, I feel like I could make this film in regards to, like, what equipment is used and, like, the limitations of just, like, where they are and what they're doing. But there's so much more to, like, when you look past that and you're just watching it to get the story and to hear what it's trying to tell you, it was so loud, right? Like, it was so in your face. And I was like, we were watching it, I was like, what? Every single, like, we were, like, essentially, like, live tweeting to each other. Yeah. I was like, this is, like, replaying what's happening outside right now with, like, the protests. I was like, in all the different ways. Like, it's so interesting that, like, these same themes and these same tactics are just replicated. Yeah. And so, like, what you have in this film is essentially, it's the beginning of the Purge. And if you're unfamiliar with the Purge films, it's this idea that for one night, all crime besides, like, I think you can't kill the president or something. Like, there's, like, 3 things that were listed, like, you can't do. Okay. But all crime is legal besides that.
Yeah, so get it all out of your system so that the rest of the year, you can just totally be cool.
Yeah. And so the first Purge, the original Purge, number 1, is essentially just a home invasion film with Ethan Hawke and his family, and it's kind of a bit of a touch on classism, a little bit in there, but it's really just like a new wave version of The Strangers. Yeah. And it was great, and it's very simple, and I always love, like, when you have these really big ideas, like the world is so vast and expansive because of this one idea, but you focus on this really minute piece of it. Like, I thought that was really interesting. Yeah. And I love how it, like, expanded, and we were like, well, if then...
Well, because it was necessary. I mean, I feel like after you watched the original one, you're just like, well, what else? You had that whole world and that's all you did? Yeah. I need to know what's happening. And then they started to listen.
Well, it's like, in improv it says, if this, then what, right? Yeah. Like, if you create a world, if you propose this idea, you throw it up in the air, then it's your team's goal is to think, okay, if that's true in this world, what else would be true in this world? Like, this is a different world. We have to follow a new line of logic, right? And so that's what it does. And so this film, First Purge, is about the start of the purge. So in the other 3 films, we exist in the world that already is here. So it's similar to like most dystopian films where you're just there and you just have to like accept that it happened. Like, you don't really get an understanding of how we got there. And like when we talked about Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale, you get to see the progression, and that was terrifying.
It makes it because it just makes it seem less far off from where you are now.
Yeah.
You get to really see what went wrong, like what happened that allowed for this society to go forth.